So what do you think when you hear the word pro, or in the case of the iPad behind me, iPad Pro? Well, let's start with what does pro mean? Like it's a word that can be used. Apple uses it a lot in a lot of their devices. So like, what does it mean, and how is it used for that device right there? And well, number one, pro is a shortened version of the word professional. And a profession is something you do, right? So theoretically, a pro device would be something that helps a professional get their profession done at an easier, quicker, faster rate, whatever it is, right? That is what I would imagine pro means, right? So I've had this iPad Pro for almost a year at this point. So I feel like I'm fit to kind of talk about it. I want to know, like, does the iPad Pro deserve the pro name, professional device? Is it a professional device? Well, let's figure it out. All right, so on modern devices in today's time, I think something important, obviously, is the screen. It's what you're looking at, it's how you're interacting. And so my question, is the screen pro? Well, if we look at it, right, that iPad is not OLED, right? You can tell when the blacks are not black. And for an $800 iPad in 2024, 2023, I do sort of feel like we should be getting more OLED. And I know it's expensive, right? But something better besides LCD. So I sort of feel like the screen is not as great as it could be. It's great, it's awesome. The refresh rate is fantastic. It's 120 hertz, or I should say up to 120 hertz. It's a variable refresh rate. Overall, it's a pretty display. But is it professional? Like, is it a professional display? In that case, I don't know that I would consider it as professional as, say, for example, like the Apple Studio display, or something of that nature. Now, let's talk about the battery. And you can't really like classify a battery as being like a professional battery. But I do have to say it is good, right? The battery life definitely is good. I usually get around 7-ish hours of screen on time a day. And that is with max brightness on for a majority of the day, because I am using it kind of beside my window. So the brightness definitely is up there most of the time. And honestly, 7 hours is not bad, right? It would be better, because it is a big device. It's thin, it is big though. It would be better if it was maybe like a 10-hour a day battery life. But, I'll take what we can get, and I'm totally okay with the battery that it has. I don't know how you would really classify it as being a pro battery, but it is good. Now, if we're going to kind of talk about professional workflows using an iPad Pro, I think part of that definitely is video editing, and just data transfer in general. And I think that definitely is better on this device. If I had to consider something pro, I would probably consider the charging port or data transfer port to be pro, kinda, maybe. It is Thunderbolt USB-C, and that means that you're going to be getting really, really fast data transfer. Charging speed, it's whatever, it's like 20 watts or something, nothing crazy. But for transferring data, maybe videos through hard drives, storage, stuff like that, it's quick. And I think that definitely is something definitely more pro, and actually genuinely something I feel like a professional would enjoy more. Now, it is an iPad, a smart device. It has a camera. iPads have had a camera for almost all of them, I believe. But is it a good camera? Is it a professional camera? Now, you can record ProRes on the iPad Pro, the latest generation iPad Pro, M2. But I really do not find a need for that at all. Like, I video things, but I don't want to be that guy. You probably don't want to be that guy to show up to the party and just have your iPad in your hand like that, taking photos and videos. It's big. It's like, an iPad is not a typical camera. It's just big. But just in general, the cameras I've noticed are not that great. right? The camera bump is smaller, which means there's less room for a bigger sensor, and you can tell it's grainy. It's not ideal, but honestly, for me, as big as ProRes files are, I do not want to be shooting with it personally, so I'm gonna consider the camera not pro. But again, your opinion might be a little bit different. Now, when it comes to unlocking the device, the iPad Pro has Face ID. Now, Face ID is not specifically a professional ID of any kind, but it is the route that the iPhone chose. You know, the iPad Air has Touch ID on the power button, just like iPhones with the home button. So there's that. But yeah, Face ID. That is your main form of unlocking the device. I mean, I would not consider Face ID Pro just because, I mean, even Apple doesn't, like, it's not a pro device specific thing. But it is useful and it is cool. And it works, you know, in all lighting conditions, which I do think is a definite plus of Face ID. But I wouldn't necessarily consider it pro. Now, there's lots of accessories you can get for the iPad. I have an Apple Pencil. I have a Magic Keyboard. And that's really the only accessories I do use for my iPad. Now, here's the thing. If you want this to be a MacBook... Anyways, if you want this to be a MacBook, right, you're not exactly getting it from there, right? It would be awesome if you could boot macOS onto the iPad. That would be awesome. But it's an iPad with a keyboard attachment, is what that is. Obviously, but also, like, it functions like an iPad with a keyboard. Obviously, it's nice to have the trackpad. The keys work awesome. They feel good. You know, mobility in the joint of the keyboard is whatever. Like, it doesn't open as far as I would love. And the keyboard's also an additional $300 for the small one. And that by itself is crazy. I don't feel like that keyboard is $300 worth of use. But I mean, you know, it depends. It depends on what your use case is. You might like that. That might totally be your workflow. I mean, it is my workflow. I don't have a MacBook at all. But either way, I still do feel like it's an iPad with a keyboard. It's not a MacBook. There are some definite differences. And lastly, I do just want to talk about, well, the processor. It has the M2 chip, as I've kind of mentioned, which is the same kind of processor that is inside of the M2 MacBook Air and MacBook. It's not the same thing as the MacBook Pro because you can actually spec up those chips. So this is just a base M2 chip. That's all you can get. But I mean, it works. It's really good. I don't have any issues with it editing videos or playing games. Like, I've never pushed that chip to its limits. Actually, that's not true. There was one time I was editing a video, which I definitely did push it to its limits. But typically, day to day, you're not going to push it to its limits. It's an M2 chip. Now, if we look at Geekbench scores, I have them right here. Yeah, so I'm not really sure. I didn't fact check that, but the actual single core score is 2590 and multi-core is 9987. Now, that's a generational leap from iPad after iPad, right? You're not going to get some crazy performance from M1 to M2. Although, you know, there was a good amount of performance from the older iPad Pros to the M1 iPad Pro, just because you're switching to Apple-made software and hardware, and it just pairs together. But overall, M2 is powerful. It isn't a MacBook. If I was going to consider it Pro, I probably would. But you still can push it to its limits if you try. But I mean, that's really about it. Thank you for watching this video. It was fun to make. I do want to talk about the iPad Pro and just my thoughts on it, right? I've had it almost a year. And although it is called the iPad Pro, it might not necessarily deserve that Pro name. So I just want to talk about it. Hope you guys did enjoy. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.